Okay, it says we're live,
All right.
so apparently we're
Oh,
live.
All
Right?
right.
right.
Well, it's a pleasure being live with all you guys.
Absolutely.
I'm Josh Earl.
And I'm Will Garcia, and we have a
And I'm
very special
Kumar.
guest with us, the um, the based mod of Reddit's RMBA community, over
Yes.
200,000 members. It's basically the best thing ever. We have LieutenantKumar.
Woo!
Woo! And the YouTube page is saying the please stand by and that we're starting soon. So if someone in the chat could say if we're actually being heard right now, that'd be dope. Because it's just saying starting soon. All right, cool.
Wait, do we have a chat? Did they say we're live? Are we good to go?
Yeah, we're live.
All right, cool. Well, we're the Hoops guys.
Yeah.
And today we're continuing our 2014-2015 NBA season previews with our special guest, the AD, the Anthony Davis of moderating, the wonderful NBA subreddit, Kumar. Super happy to have you, my friend.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to be here. When I heard you guys were doing this and you guys like, hey, come on and talk about the Pelicans, I was like, you don't need to tell me twice to talk about the Pelicans. I'm on Reddit all the time, so here I am.
Yeah, and we're super happy to have you, man.
So, Kumar, just briefly, tell me a little bit about how the Pelicans did last year.
The Pelicans didn't do well last year. They came into the season with high expectations. They made a splash in the offseason by acquiring Drew Holiday and Tyreke Evans. And those were a bit controversial because they seemed a bit redundant in their skill set, and the contract seemed quite big. And so naturally, the expectations for the team were to compete and make a push for the playoffs. But we all know that didn't happen. But unfortunately, it was because of injuries. If you take a look at our starters, they missed over a combined 150 games. And then you go down the list to our top six guys. It's like over 200 games combined. So the team never really had a chance, and we never got to figure out how good they could be, and they limped their way to a 34-win season.
Yeah. But there was some good things that happened last year for them. Their offense was decent. I mean, they finished 13th in offensive rating and around league average in both expected and actual points per shot, which are these wonderful stats from Ian Levy at Nylon Calculus. You guys should all check them out if you haven't already. They're awesome. Expected points per shot is exactly like it sounds. It's kind of measuring your shot selection.
Yeah.
And of course, actual points per shot is how well you actually convert your shots. And so they were around average in those.
Yeah, and one thing that they did really well, the reason why the offense, one of the good things in the offense, they got to the rim really well. They were fourth in restricted area true shot attempts. A lot of that because of Anthony Davis putbacks. But that was another huge thing for them.
Yeah, and, they did all right making perimeter shots. They finished sixth in three-point percentage, and they were third in above-the-break three-point percentage, and they even finished seventh in mid-range field goal percentage.
Yeah, they were definitely good at making shots, and for such a young team, I was really impressed by how well they took care of the ball. They were 8th best in turnover percentage out of all 30 teams, and they turned it over under fewer. Wow, that's a really terrible way for me to word that.
Under.
14 times per game on turnovers. That's really solid.
So, yeah, that's one of the things Coach Monty really, really stressed within our guys. They're like, hey, you got to take care of the ball. And, we have Drew Holiday is known for his turnover issues, and everyone's like, man, how's he going to fit? Luckily, we have other guys like Ryan Anderson and AD who are just exceptionally good at taking care of the ball. Their hands are like glue. They don't turn it over. They don't make bad decisions. Whether they're being hounded on the defense or expected to do something with the ball, they just protect it. And so in the end, it balanced out, and we didn't turn the ball over a lot, which is something I was pretty happy with. And offensively, I think Monty doesn't get his credit as an offensive coach.
Yeah. Those inbounds plays they run are genius.
He has some really, really creative inbounds plays, but he also really creative sets he runs to get people like Ryan Anderson open. There's a lot of screening action, there's a lot of distraction, and a lot of misdirection plays. And you can tell he hails from the Spurs system because he used to be an assistant coach under Pop.
Yep.
And you can tell he's picked up on that. And I think most of the criticism he gets can sort of be pointed to his personnel. He's had very limited tools to work with for the past 3 years, and last year was the first time he really had talent. But then we all know what happened to that talent. Yeah. So this year is going to be a very important year for him. It's going to be it's make or break. We have all the pieces. We've added Asik. We look like a complete team, or a somewhat complete team, and so this is the year to really show what can you do. You have a budding superstar, and it's now or never really.
Yep.
Another thing that went well for them, despite beyond the creative offense, defensively, they didn't really allow many shots in the paint, which kind of makes sense when you have AD prowling that area.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants to take it to the rim against the pterodactyl like him.
Right.
They finished 5th in the NBA in terms of opponent shots within the paint. And, of course, they led the league in blocks per game at 6.4 per game. And they added Asik. So, defensively, some stuff went well for them as well.
Yeah, defensively, some of the raw numbers look well, but overall, it was just a poor defensive year for us.
We're gonna get to that.
Yeah. So let's get to that.
But, we're on a good positive train here. So let's talk a little bit about one of the big reasons why they got 6.4 blocks per game. Anthony freaking Davis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well.
You know this guy more than we do.
Yeah, everybody knows I'm the biggest AD fan around.
Go preach.
And this guy is the truth. I don't know what else to say about it. I get too excited whenever I talk about him, so I'm gonna try to temper my excitement here. But he took a huge leap forward last year. He put up around 13-8 his rookie year, and all of a sudden he's a 20-10-3 type of guy. And
don't mean to Kanye you, but just to show how much he jumped, he did better at points per 38.6 and, of course, points per game. Block rate, assist rate, rebounds per 36, free throw rate, free throw percentage, field goal percentage, and true shooting percentage. Literally everything, essentially. He improved better.
He just improved across the board, statistically, but also as a player. You look at him play defense, he understands, rotations and schemes better. You look at him offensively last year, his rookie year, he was a garbage man. He'd clean up the misses. He'd get a lot of points off of putbacks and dunks. Most of his offense came from the pick and roll and offensive rebounds. So he hadn't really expanded his game. And this past year, it might have been because of all the injuries we had. He really, really got to explore what it's like to be the guy on a team. And we had no one else to go to, and he stepped up. Most of the time when you're the only option, your efficiency takes a hit because the defense is focused on you. People are doubling you. No one else is a threat to score. But AD, he increased his scoring and he increased his efficiency. So it's this dude really, really knew what he was doing, and he took a massive jump in mid-range shooting. He shot 29%. His rookie year, and he shot 40% this year, and so that's always a good sign for a 20-year-old.
Yeah, the guy's got a stroke. There's some rumors going around that he's gonna start shooting threes. I don't know how legitimate they are, but yeah, he definitely leaps and bounds.
I don't think he'll shoot many threes this year. I'd say about 25 threes this season.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Um, but his game is kind of like Blake Griffin's, where he can beat his man off the dribble, and
Yes.
he's gonna make a living off of going to the rim, and he's really good at making those awkward shots because of his lanky frame. It looks like that shot shouldn't go in. It kind of looks weird, and it just goes in. And
Yeah.
if not, he took a huge jump in drawing fouls last year too, and that's very important. You look at all these superstars, what are they good at? They're good at drawing fouls. So he's gonna make a living off of driving to the rim, but like his mid range is gonna open that up for him.
Oh yeah. Just to put his last season in kind of a more historical perspective, looking at all like post players 6'10" or taller, under the age of 22, who averaged at least 15 points per game, at least 3 offensive rebounds per game, at least 7 defensive rebounds per game, and at least 2 blocks per game. These are the guys that his name comes up with. Shaquille O'Neal, Tim Duncan, Alonzo Mourning, all 3 of those guys, Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
Dwight Howard, who will likely wind up being a Hall of Famer.
Oh, no doubt.
So, at 20 years old, he's putting up numbers comparable to some of the best big men we've seen over the last several decades.
You know what's even more crazy about that is if you adjust that filter to who's done it at 20 years old, it's just Shaq and him. No one has done it at 20 years old. And then, if you sort it by PER, he's had the highest PER for a 19-year-old.
Oh. You have some technical problems?
I think so.
Okay, we're back. We're back.
Yep.
Hey, by the way, Trevor, I really like that question about Anthony Davis assists. We're going to get to it in a bit. Why don't we put that up in 5 questions?
I see these questions. Can
We're going to get to that in, in a bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. You think that Tyreke Evans had a good year this year too, don't you?
I think he had a quietly a good year. He was brought in to be the Ginobili type of dude. That was the rumor. He's gonna come off the bench and sort of be his own one-man show, and that didn't really work out. Well, that's not exactly accurate. When Ryan Anderson was healthy, he was playing really well. So if you look at the stats for when Ryan Anderson was healthy, Tyreke was putting up about 17, 6, and 6, and in under like 30 minutes a game. So he was playing really well. And most of the people noticed that he played really well to close out the season, but there was a stretch when everyone was healthy where Tyreke was playing really well. But then, Anderson went down. Tyreke got stuck on the bench with a bunch of people that can't shoot. And he does one thing and one thing only, and that's attack the rim with a full head of steam. And he couldn't do that anymore. And his stats took a hit. But he closed out once he finally got the opportunity to start and play with better players. Like he put up unreal numbers the last 2 months. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think of him a lot the same way I think about Monte Ellis. In that he's the kind of guy who, like you said, really good at attacking the rim, but he needs people around him and to play with people who really bring that out well. So, like, good spacing becomes really important when you want to play a guy like Tyreke and you want him to be his most effective.
Yeah, spacing is key, but more so than spacing, just talented players around him. If he's if he's playing 2-on-5 against the other team, you're really, really taking away, because he's going to telegraph what he's going to do. He's going to go attack the rim. But you're taking away one of his most valuable assets is, driving and kicking and creating. He's a really good shot creator. I'd say he's more creative at passing than Drew Holiday is. Some of the passes I've seen Tyreke make are absolutely nuts. And so when you have 4 other talented people around him, Tyreke has weapons to give the ball to. And when the defense inevitably collapses on Tyreke driving into the paint, all of a sudden there are people open to make something happen. And so it's just more about putting talents around him than spacing. But naturally, spacing helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of things that help, there are a lot of things that would help this team if they corrected. Um, and one of those things is that they didn't shoot that many threes last year, which I know it's a systemic sort of thing, but they finished 28th in corner three attempts and 29th in above the break attempts. And hopefully this year, when you added guys like Eric Gordon, who's going to be hopefully healthy, Ryan Anderson, who's coming back from injury, Austin Rivers, who's improving as a shooter, just leaps and bounds. They brought in Jimmer Fredette. They're going to have Drew Holiday.
Luke
All those
Madden.
guys can shoot. Yeah. So do you think that's going to change this year at all?
Yeah, I think so. It looks like a point of emphasis in the preseason. Naturally you can't take away much from the preseason, but they are shooting many more threes than they did last year. I think they're averaging about 23 a game compared to like the 15 or 16 they averaged last year. That's a huge improvement. And you got to look at Ryan Anderson takes about 7 threes himself a game.
Yeah.
And he went down. Drew Holiday takes about 2 or 3. That's like 10 or so threes in between the two guys that we were missing for a large portion of last year. And when your two main offensive guys are AD and Tyreke, you're not going to have a lot of three-point shooting going on. So I think that contributed to the cause last year, which surprised me how we still ended up with a decent offensive rating despite not shooting that many threes.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, you have some things to say about them on the defensive end. So why don't you get on that?
So AD obviously was a nice rim deterrent, but overall the Pelicans really struggled in relation to Dean Oliver's defensive four factors. Teams made a lot of shots against them, so they obviously weren't contesting shots as well as perhaps they should have been. They finished 25th in defensive effective field goal percentage. Teams got a lot of shots, got a lot of possessions from the Pelicans. They were only 17th in forcing opponent turnovers, and they were only 21st in defensive rebound percentage. And then they gave up a bunch of the best shots in basketball, the free throw. They gave those up a lot. They were dead last in opponents' free throw per field goal attempt last year.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, good. Well,
just one quick thing to everyone in the chat. We're going to have a little Q&A toward the end of the video. We're watching. We're definitely keeping our eye on there. There's a couple of good questions being asked. We're definitely going to get to them. So if we don't respond right away, it doesn't mean we're not going to get to it. We see them. They're awesome. So we're going to get to those in just a bit. We just have some stuff we're going to get through, and then we're going to get right on those. So anyway, pick it away, Kumar.
Yeah, so fouling has been an issue with this, and I think that's a product of lazy defense. Or not lazy defense. It's a product of defensive breakdowns. When your defense misses its rotations, and all of a sudden there's a guy streaking to the rim or something, and you can't stop him, the easy thing to do is foul him. That's something we had a problem with last year, and that's something we've had a problem with this preseason too. But at the same time, you look at who got minutes. Greg Stiesman got minutes. Alexis Ajansha, I don't know how to pronounce his name, to be honest. I'm not French.
Alexis Jenga.
Or Ajinka, I don't even know.
I think it's Ajinka, but
I think you're right.
I'm not sure.
They average more than like 6 fouls per 36 minutes. They're human foul machines. So that obviously isn't gonna help us. So I think the introduction of Asik is definitely going to be huge on that regard. But also, more overall defense. We used a sort of hyper trap help and recover scheme last year. It's similar to what Miami has been using, or Miami used with LeBron during the Big Three era. It's also what Boston used during their championship runs. Basically, you have a bunch of guys running around contesting shots, like switching. It looks really hectic, but it can work really, really well against teams that don't have good ball movement. Boston utilized it really well. And two things that help it work out are lengthy players, which we had, lengthy quick players, and also just veteran smartness, because vets pick up on schemes pretty fast. We didn't have vets. We
No,
had
but second youngest team, right?
Yeah, we had a bunch of young pups, and Monty was like, "Hey, here's this really, really complicated scheme. Go and run it." And they're like, "Well, I don't know what's going on." And what happened was people lose track of who they're supposed to switch on to or rotate to, and then AD'd be like, "Shit, like I'm supposed to be responsible for team defense. Let me go try and make something happen." And so there'd literally be possessions where he'd go contest a shot on the three-point line, and then he'd come back to be a weak side help defender on the rim, and then he'd go like rotate somewhere else. Like he'd try to do everything by himself, and that happened quite often. And throughout the game, he'd end up guarding every single position. Like you say, like LeBron guards 1 through 5. Anthony Davis literally guards 1 through 5 every single game, or he did last year. And that's gonna hurt, because that's gonna if once you're running around the court all the time trying to do be Superman, you're gonna be out of position. And I think that's where a lot of AD's concerns on the defensive end come from, is he'd end up out of position when he tried to do too much. But as we saw this summer in FIBA, when we use a more conservative scheme where the big drops back in the pick and roll, and it's more you're looking to ice the ball handler. AD was wrecking havoc. He was playing the pass and lanes really well. He was containing the drives. He knew where the bigs were. He was just all over the place defensively and shutting people down. And it looks like we've switched to this scheme in the preseason. Monty spent some time with Tibbs, and I'm sure AD was like, "Hey, look what Tibbs is doing. They have the best defense in the league, or the second best defense in the league. They're really good at this. We were good at this in Spain. Let's bring it back to New Orleans." And I think that's what we're seeing.
Absolutely. And that would address one of the biggest problems for this team last year. The shots that were given up tended to be really efficient looks. Opposing teams shot the 4th most shots in the restricted area at the rim against them, the 7th most corner threes, and they didn't give up that many mid-range shots either, according to XPPS. So this team...
It's like completely anti-analytics. Like, how analytics is like, make them take the mid-range shot and not the 3 in the rim. You're like, nah, you can shoot all the 3s and get to the rim as much as you want. That's cool.
Yeah, and that's how you go 34
and
48.
New Orleans hospitality.
Yeah. It's like,
they're just trying to be nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Have a smoothie while you're at it.
I love it. Speaking of, I love it. I love the addition of Omer Asik. I bet you do too.
Yeah, no, he's gonna be huge. He was always sort of on the bubble with us. People were like, are they gonna trade Ryan Anderson for him or not? And I'm really, really, really glad we didn't trade Ryan Anderson for him. But we ended up getting who we wanted anyway. So I'm very, very happy about that. He's tremendous on defense, tremendous on glass. He's just a really tough guy, and I think he's going to be huge for us this year.
Absolutely. Awesome screens, really good getting the outlet going in transition.
Yeah.
That's going to be killer. And the one thing that I like most about bringing him in is that a guy like Anthony Davis doesn't have to guard a guy like LaMarcus Aldridge.
Well, I think AD will still end up guarding LaMarcus Aldridge. And, to be honest, AD's done a hell of a job against LaMarcus every time he's played him. If you still look at the matchup numbers between them, it's kind of crazy. But, yeah, no, he won't have to guard guys like Boogie or Marc Gasol or Al Jefferson. Those guys abused him last year. They would push him around, and, AD could use his length to bother them, but at the end of the day, he was 230 last year, 225 maybe, and these guys are 280. That's not fair.
The one thing that'll be really nice about adding Asik is he's going to provide that rim deterrent in the restricted area, so that AD can kind of function almost like a free safety on defense and be that defensive linchpin, making sure all the holes are plugged, covering up for any problems on the perimeter, because now AD knows I've got somebody behind me that's going to cover things up. And the scary thing for opposing ball handlers, if you're trying to get to that rim, is first you got to get him past AD, and then Asik's going to be waiting for you.
Yeah, no, that's going to be huge, and I think it's going to allow our perimeter defenders to play smarter too. Last year they couldn't afford to take as many gambles. Like now they can play tighter, knowing that they have help behind them, and really really pressure the people with the ball. So that's going to be huge. This last preseason game against Washington, our starters only played like the first half. In the first half, Washington was like 3 of 13 in the paint. I was like, that's nuts. I was watching the game. It was just madness to try to even attempt a shot. And that's not going to be the case all throughout the season, but it's definitely a promising sign. And I'm looking forward to those two really mesh well and really make some noise. You look at how sort of OKC functions with Perkins and Ibaka, and Ibaka just sort of roams around, swats everything.
Yep.
And I'm kind of hoping that the Asik AD combo becomes like a super version of that.
Yes.
Yeah, it basically is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Speaking of super, Jimmer Fredette, if he had a superpower, it would be to be able to make shots from literally anywhere.
Yeah, and he basically can, but that's about all he can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how do you think he fits in?
I think he's one of those guys who our front office targets very specific sets of people, like good chemistry type of guys, young vets, sort of like fallen stars, people that haven't had much of an opportunity. So it kind of makes sense why we targeted him. Last year we had Brian Roberts in a similar role. And honestly, I think that's all he's going to be asked to do. He's a much better shooter than Roberts. Probably not as good as a dribble penetrator, but they're a wash on defense. They're both awful on defense.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to fit really well next to Austin and even Tyreke. Just opens up the floor, and he has the green light from the coaching staff to just bomb away from the 3-point line, and I think that's exactly what he's here for.
Yeah, absolutely. There's basically they want him to chuck in an efficient fashion.
Yeah, basically, it's like you're gonna get maybe 5 to 10 minutes a game. You better be taking your shots and making them. That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Speaking of a guy who chucks a bit, they drafted Russ Smith, and he is like the biggest chucker in all of Chuckerville. To be fair, he did improve his efficiency a lot in his final year at Louisville. He actually became a reasonably efficient scorer. His biggest strengths are creating for himself, and he's a really solid perimeter shooter. And I think he could fit a similar role to what you're asking Jimmer to do, as sort of an instant offense guy. Of course, I would assume that he continues to work on his decision making.
Yeah, I think I honestly don't think he's gonna get much time. I think he's not ready for the NBA yet, at least from what we've sort of seen in the preseason and the type of minutes he's getting in the preseason. But I think he's just one of those guys that's like really exciting to watch, but that can also make you cringe in the same play because you're like, oh man, did he just do this? And it's like, oh crap, he just did a really bad turnover. So I think eventually he has potential to be sort of like a Pat Beverly type of dude, where he's a hound on defense, he's a pest, and I think that's where he's going to make his money is on defense, and then just being let loose in the fast break. But I don't think he's ready. I don't think he's going to get that many minutes this season. If he does, then something's gone horribly wrong.
Right on. Speaking of horribly wrong, if John Salmons is starting on this team, that'd mean things went horribly wrong. Because he's a decent spot-up shooter who can shoot the corner 3, and that's about it.
That's about it. He's one of those guys. So he's our oldest guy on the team. So that's exactly what he was brought in for, is that veteran presence, locker room chemistry. He used to be a teammate with Monty back in the Sixers.
Okay.
So yeah, it kind of makes sense now, right? Monty's like, let me bring this guy. Monty's really religious, and Jimmer's religious. Sam is really religious. So I think it's just a chemistry type thing. So as they say in the Grantland previews, he's the chemist.
Yeah.
But I think he shouldn't be. He's not going to be starting. Tyreke's going to be starting without a doubt. Will we probably see him in a backup role? I think so. But it's interesting to see who wins out that backup role.
Yep, and speaking of winning out a backup role, Patrick Young isn't going to be doing that. He'll probably spend the year in the D League. My personal thoughts on him were that he was really big and physically imposing in college, but he really doesn't do anything all that well. He isn't really like a rim protector dude or a great rebounder or a great, really much of anything.
Yeah, he's one of those dudes that he's a hustle man.
Yeah,
He's
he's
like
a garbage guy.
not afraid to put his body. Yeah, he's like he throws his weight. You know, he's big and he lays out for stuff like this last game I was watching. He like literally went completely horizontal to grab a loose ball, and
Yep.
so he's one of those type of guys. I don't think he's gonna get any minutes this year. Our big rotation looks pretty solid. And yeah, again, if he's getting play time, something went wrong.
Yeah. Speaking of an energy guy, unfortunately the Pelicans lost one when Al-Farouq Aminu signed with the Mavs. Yes, Aminu.
Yeah, I don't know if you call him an energy guy. He was always criticized for falling asleep whenever he was with us. We're gonna miss his rebounding a lot. He's
That's
a
what I
really,
meant.
really good rebounder. He's basically a power forward in a small forward's body. Stupidly athletic. He can dunk on anybody. He runs really well in the open court transition. Can catch lobs from anywhere. But he can't shoot. He can't dribble. He can't. He's not a particularly good distributor. And there'd be for like the last 3 seasons, he'd consistently get benched for like a week or two because he'd fall asleep on defense. Like he'd get put in Monty's doghouse, and I'm not even joking. It was called Monty's doghouse, and he'd be put in it because he just wouldn't be focused. And I think Rick Carlisle is a really, really good coach, and I think he can bring out that sort of focus Amin has been lacking. Because Amin has never played on a playoff team, much less a team like Dallas. And Dallas is a great franchise, and so if there's any place for him to really, really buckle down and become reach sort of his like potential as an elite perimeter defender, I think it can be in Dallas. But I think they'll be like playing him primarily as a backup power forward type player. Putting him next to Parsons or somebody like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of put him next to Parsons, Anthony Morrow was never put next to Chandler Parsons. Kind of a non sequitur.
I think that very non sequitur, but I like the confidence you used it with. I actually think Anthony Morrow was one of the best free agent acquisitions this offseason. It's just unfortunately it was taking away from the Pelicans.
Yeah. No, he was a really underrated acquisition for the Thunder. I think realistically we didn't really have a shot of obtaining him once the Asik trade went through, because our primary goal was let's get a big guy to play defense, and once we got him, boom, there goes our cap space. And Anthony Morrow definitely earned his contract with us. He's an unreal shooter.
Amazing.
Really one of the top 5 shooters in the game. He's been so like forever. He just sort of like bounced around the league for whatever reason. I think he's gonna get a lot of great looks in OKC with Durant and Westbrook. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm kind of sure.
It's all good.
But no, he's also like a great locker room guy. Like he would consistently get really, really fired up. He had his own little like podcast called like Television or something like that. And he'd interview like our teammates, and he's just a really good guy. Like we're gonna miss him, like no doubt.
Yep, absolutely.
But
another player that you guys lost this year, one of my favorites. I have a thing I like to call ramen noodle all-stars, and they are guys who are really cheap contracts and can ball out of their minds.
Yes, they fill their roles perfectly, all for less than the cost of an average NBA salary.
Yep. Jason Smith cooks in 3 minutes and gives you 75% of your daily value of MSG and sodium because he is a ramen noodle all-star through and through. Obviously, was a fan favorite, awesome teammate. What do you say?
He's gonna be playing MSG too.
Yes.
There you go. Perfect fit.
Perfect. Yeah.
Hustles his butt off. Great mid-range shooter. Shot over 47% from there. As Kumar told me, he's apparently impossible to dunk on.
Yeah, you can't dunk on him. Like Iguodala tried, Parsons tried, Durant tried. I think MKG tried. A bunch of people tried. You just can't do it.
No.
He will spot your shit. Like, no kidding.
Yeah. So I think he's gonna be missed by everyone.
Yeah, no, he was definitely the crowd favorite. He was the guy to get everybody pumped up. Or at least like twice a game, he'd be like, "Oh, let's go," stuff like that. I was actually at this game. It was the first game. It was Chris Paul's first game back in New Orleans. I had pretty nice tickets, and I was watching, and that was the game. Blake Griffin completely was decked by Jason Smith. Jason Smith just pretty much tackled him, and obviously, Jason Smith got suspended rightfully, but to be in that crowd and in such a contentious game, and we ended up winning that game too. It was great. And then when he got thrown out, like the whole crowd was just going wild. It was like surreal. It was probably my favorite game I've seen live, and I had season tickets last year. So yeah, he's gonna be missed. Everybody loved that guy.
So going from everybody loved that guy to everybody didn't love that guy, you say he's the most hated of all Pelican players by the fan base. Want to talk a bit about Brian Roberts, or would it hurt you too much?
No, I mean, I'm happy he's gone, but like, I don't know if you guys remember like Gennaro Pargo back in the Hornets.
Generic Pargo.
Generic Pargo. Yeah, no, just it's funny that now both of them are on the same team on the Hornets. It's gonna be interesting. I don't think there's enough balls for the two of them, but this guy, Brian Roberts, he was acquired for like a minimum salary from he played in Europe somewhere, and Dems found him and was like, hey, come on over, play. So like for his contract value, he's a pretty solid player, but as for someone I want on the court, absolutely not. He you think of how bad Jimmer plays defense. That's exactly that's Brian Roberts to the T. Except Jimmer shoots threes and Brian Roberts shoots 20-footers.
Yeah.
So that's really annoying. He also, dribbles the air out of the ball. And so he's like constantly dribbling around. All of a sudden there's like 8 seconds left on the clock and you're like, come on, Brian, you going to pass the ball or not? And yeah, so that's Brian Roberts for you.
Yeah. Having said that, one good thing is that actually that would not be a good thing. The Pelicans had the 10th least player minutes returning from last year, so that would mean that out of all the teams in terms of continuity and bringing their guys back and not having anyone walk in free agency, they'd be 20th, which isn't the best for continuity, but really all of the main pieces remain. So there shouldn't be a huge continuity problem, and I don't think it should take any sort of issues with adjustments are going to be to different schemes. Then I think they're going to be to like everybody learning how to play with each other. By the way, that stat courtesy of John Schumann on Twitter.
Yeah, so I don't know. They say like it's the 10th least minutes returning, and like obviously like our starters didn't play many minutes last year because they were all hurt. So I don't know how that factors, but we kept our entire core intact. We're bringing back everybody: Drew, Eric, Tyreke, Ryan, AD, and then we added Asik. So we have 6 main core guys. And the key bench players we're bringing back are Rivers and Alexi and Luke. So we pretty much brought back all the important people. So
absolutely, and Luke Babbitt is a very important person.
Oh, he's
not even being sarcastic.
He's most important.
Okay, that's a little sarcastic.
No, I'm being dead serious.
More than Anthony Davis?
Like Anthony Davis can't flip his hair like that.
Good point.
And Anthony Davis doesn't have a confidence with Babbitt. So I'm just saying.
If he could do that with his brow, that would be the most amazing thing I'd ever see.
I think
you could do that with your Pat Riley do. That would be the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
No, my Pat Riley do from filming the Miami Heat video it's not moving really.
No, that's super glued, man.
Yeah, it'll take a while.
Speaking of things that may take a while, it may take some Pelicans player a long time to adjust to slightly bigger roles because, as it turns out, this team brought in 11 fewer possessions per game than they did than they lost. So some players are going to be in some expanded roles. Does anybody have an idea who they think that might be? I'm thinking Brian Anderson's probably going to take most of those up because he's coming back from injury.
Yeah, definitely Ryan's going to get a lot of those possessions, but naturally you look at AD, like he's the main guy. He's going to be fed the ball constantly. I'd say we have guards that demand the ball a lot, so I don't think the whole possession thing's much of an issue.
No, I agree with that. One thing that might be an issue, Josh came up with a stat called rest differential. The Pelicans didn't do very well in it in terms of scheduling, but maybe you can explain what that is and why negative 26 is terrible.
So rest differential is just my basic way of trying to gauge how well rested the team's going to be over the course of the season. So it's basically just taking the team's road back-to-backs, their 3 games in 4 nights, and their 4 games in 5 nights, and comparing that to their opponents over the course of the season. And negative 26, as you can imagine, means over the course of the season, the Pelicans are going to be less rested than their opponents, which, assuming that they're actually healthy this year, they've got young guys that might not be a major problem, but considering they had so many health injuries and health problems last year, it's somewhat troubling to see such a negative rest differential.
Absolutely. This is one of the worst ones we've seen.
Yeah, I mean,
going to be pretty rough.
I think that's something that just sucks. Like,
yep.
Yeah.
You can't do anything about it.
Like, come on, do us a solid. But
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's kind of disconcerting with the injuries we've had. But ideally, like, we're a really young team, so that shouldn't affect us a lot. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But again, that's beyond our control. You just gotta go out there and play.
Yep.
Speaking of things that are beyond your control, one segment that we do, and we're going to do because it's beyond anybody's control, is 5 questions. And we're actually you are in control because we're taking the first 2 from the comments. So someone asked, why doesn't Anthony Davis get assists?
Why doesn't Anthony Davis get assists?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as of now, it's just not been his role. You look at when he gets the ball, he usually gets it in that sort of high elbow area where Marcus Aldridge and Dirk get it. But he's not looking to pass. He's looking to either drive or shoot. And we have a bunch of guards who are playmakers. I think Monty's gonna give him more of an expanded role this year. He's sort of taken AD along slowly. And I think you're going to see an increase in assists. But as of now, it's just not been his role. It's not that he can't do it. He makes some spectacular passes. It's just that's just not what's asked of him.
I think you're on mute, Will.
Yeah, I was to type out a question right quick to the people in the comments, and I didn't want to have everyone hear my keystrokes. Another question from the chat is Monty Williams the right coach for this team?
That's a tricky question. He's been here for about 3-4 years now. He's in, I think the 2nd year, maybe 3rd year of his extension. So he has a couple years left on his contract. Here's what I think about Monty. I think the players love him. I think AD loves him. He's young and he's a really good player motivator, and I think he's, as I mentioned earlier, he's underrated when it comes to offensive schemes. But as far as on-court success, I think this is a huge year for him. I don't think we're gonna see a firing mid-season, even if it's a disappointing start. That's just not the way our franchise rolls. Plus, if we fire him, who do we have? We have assistant coach Brian Gates, and some other assistant coach, and they're not gonna find George Karl or someone big like that, like Jeff Van Gundy or any of these big names that are often thrown out. They're not gonna step in mid-season. you want to have a full off season to recruit and see like who's out there on the market. Even if you decide to go for someone like I don't know Shaka Smart in the college world. So yeah, I don't think he gets fired midseason. So we'll see. We'll see how well we do, and I think that's gonna influence if Monty is part of our future or not.
Absolutely. To get away from the comments in the chat for just a second, sorry guys, but I've got one too. Does this team continue to use the trapping style defense from last year? If so, how often? Does it turn to like a situational thing?
I think it's going to be not utilized as often as it was last year. We're seeing the bigs drop back on the pick and rolls, and in the preseason, we're seeing AD and Asik float around that free throw line, sort of being those intimidating forces, people forcing opponents to take mid-range shots. And I know what we are probably going to see a bit. We might see some of the trapping defense if this doesn't work out, but they ran the Anderson Davis Asik lineup last game, which was the first time they've run it. They ran it for about like 6 minutes or something. And when they did, they did the 3-2 zone, which really helps out because you don't want Anderson running around chasing small forwards, and you don't want to take AD away from the rim. So the 3-2 zone, caught Washington with their pants down. I don't think it's going to happen against smarter teams. I don't think it's going to happen against contenders, but we're going to see that with that ultra big lineup, so to speak. But I think for the most part, it's going to be a more conservative approach, kind of like how Charlotte started off last year. Charlotte, the reason they were a top defense is, and they got away with it, despite having Al Jefferson, was of their conservative approach. They did the basic like let me drop back on the screen, let me ice the ball handler, and it worked out really well for them. I think once we get this down, they're gonna start adding like more rules to it, but it's down first.
Right on. And then one final, actually not a final question, the big question, you typed it in, so I think you should ask it.
Yeah, my question is how healthy are we going to be this year?
Got a magic 8 ball? Anybody got a magic 8 ball?
Yeah.
Nobody has a magic 8 ball, but I think it's a legitimate question, and you look at our history. Eric Gordon's been injured forever. Holiday's coming off a leg surgery. Anderson's coming off the back surgery. And while, they've been healthy in the preseason, stuff goes wrong. And if stuff goes wrong, who steps up?
Yeah.
We have a good group of 6 guys, but beyond that, it's kind of shaky. So a lot of our season, and I think the Western Conference in general, you can say this about a lot of the lower tier playoff teams, is health is going to dictate the season. Whichever team pulls off the healthiest season is going to have the greatest chance for success. You look at Dallas, like if Tyson goes down, like who's going to play defense?
Absolutely.
In Houston, like if Howard has injury issues again with his back, or if Harden, takes a hit, like suddenly, they're screwed, for lack of a better word. You could go down a list of a bunch.
No, that's the right word.
Yeah, you can go down a list, and you could do that with every team. And so I think health is going to play a huge role in this NBA season in general.
Absolutely. Josh, I think we got a little out of order in the questions, but I think question number 2 is on the board, and I think you might have typed it in?
Yeah, I typed it in. And Kumar's already talked briefly about how it's been done in the preseason so far, but how is Monty going to use Asik and AD together defensively? More specifically, how is he going to have them defend pick and rolls, and in different situations too? Like obviously defending a pick and roll against the Warriors when Steph's on ball is going to be different than defending a pick and roll against Russell Westbrook or Reggie Jackson from the Thunder.
Yeah, definitely. I think against most teams they're probably gonna look to ice, but when you have someone like Lillard or Curry coming off that screen, they're probably gonna have AD hedge hard, try to contain that ball handler and not let that shot off. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a situational thing, but for the most part, I think they're going to look to ice.
Yeah.
Yep.
But like I said, AD has the length to do that, and he already has a year of running that hedging scheme under his belt. So I think they will use it when it's beneficial.
Right on. Speaking of beneficial, team previews, one beneficial thing you can do with them is make predictions. So the way that we like to do our predictions, we do a thing called 20, 50, 80, and we give a prediction that we think is 20% likely to happen, 50% likely to happen, and 80% likely to happen. And that lets us get away with saying some crazy shit, but also cover our ass enough, and also make predictions that, knock on wood, we think are going to happen. So we're going to let Kumar give his predictions first, and go to town, bud.
Do I start with the 20 or do I start with the 80?
Start with whatever you want to start with.
Whatever feels right.
80.
Okay, cool.
I'm gonna start with it. I'm gonna get bolder as I progress. I think it's 80% likely we're gonna have an above average offense and defense. So top 15 in offensive rating, top 15 in defensive rating. We were already there offensively last year, and I don't think it's any stretch to say we'll be there defensively this year.
Yeah, you added Omer Asik, and new defensive system should work better with your personnel.
Yeah, and an additional year of just comfort in the NBA and understanding defensive schemes, which, AD came in from Kentucky already kind of touted as this defensive force, but even players like AD have to learn the nuances of team defense. So most young players, and you guys had a really young roster last year, most young players take a little while to learn that. So not only are you adding Asik and a better fitting defensive system, but your young guys should be a little more experienced with team defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And they'll just understand the players of the league better. It's another year playing against the Chris Bosches, the LaMarcus Aldridges of the game, and or other players. So the more you play, the better you get.
Absolutely. Speaking of the more you play, the better you get. What's your take on Tyreke Evans and his passing?
Oh, yeah, so my 50% likely thing is I say he's going to lead the team in assists this year. Monty said that, and Drew, they said that they're both going to have Drew play off the ball a lot this year.
Okay.
And he's shown that he can do that. He played off the ball in UCLA. Yeah, I think he went to UCLA. Yeah, he definitely went to UCLA.
Yep.
He played shooting guard at UCLA. He's a really good catch and shoot three-point shooter, really good in spot-up situation. He can stroke the ball. We're going to see Tyreke handle the ball a lot this season, similar to what he did closing out the year last year. Mm-hmm. And I think he's going to lead the team in assists.
That's a solid prediction. Okay, and for your crazy one?
My crazy one, 20% likely, I think AD wins Defensive Player of the Year.
Actually not that crazy.
Yeah, I think you might be underselling that.
A little bit.
Because I think that, like we've mentioned, offensively and defensively, the team should be improved. Mm-hmm. And Asik is going to free AD up a little bit defensively. So any kind of major leap that they have defensively, it's not really going to be Asik's not going to get that credit. Monty's not going to get that credit. Mm-hmm. Overall, people are going to give that credit to AD. So I think
it's just fingers are gonna point to him. That's your superstar. Yeah. And then when we fail, same thing's gonna happen. It's like, where were you, AD?
Yeah.
So
it's pretty BS, but that's how it works.
Yeah, I mean, I put 20% likely because you still have Serge Ibaka, you still have Joakim Noah, you still have Marc Gasol.
You put 20% likely because it's 20% likely.
Tyson Chandler coming back to Dallas could be another sleeper for that.
Yeah. Right. So there's a lot of good defenders out there, and as always, LeBron makes a push for I'm going to be Defensive Player of the Year this year, and one day the media's going to give it to him. They're just going to give it to him, whether he deserves it or not. So if Cleveland has a decent a top 5 defense this year, they're probably going to be like, that was LeBron.
Yeah, probably.
Right on. So Josh, do you want to get next, or am I getting next?
Whatever you want to do, buddy.
I want to rock, paper, scissors for it.
All right.
Let's do it. Okay, so one. What is it? What do you got?
Scissors.
What? We gotta do it again? Okay.
It looks really weird on camera.
Yeah, okay.
All right, yeah, it looks strange, and I apologize for anybody that thinks that was weird. All right, so I think it's 20% likely that someone actually doesn't hang up immediately if they were offered Eric Gordon in a trade this year. I
Wow.
think you could convince Hinkie, given that the cap is likely to rise in the next couple years, to take Eric Gordon's contract. If you feel that way, you'd have to probably throw in at least a pick. But
Yeah.
I think with the cap going up, his contract still terrible, but will look slightly less terrible. And to a team like Philly, who's looking to acquire extra assets, rolling the dice on a guy like Eric Gordon, who's still relatively young, and picking up an additional asset might be something they'd be interested in.
You
Absolutely.
know, I don't think Philly's gonna be the destination because we're not really in a position to give up picks.
True.
We've given up a lot of them, and I don't think we're gonna do it anytime soon. You never know, but I think maybe not this year. I think Gordon will probably end up getting traded, but that's on him. If he stays healthy, if he plays well, if he can be a consistent, efficient scorer, even if he puts up 15 points a game, if he's efficient, I think there'll be a market for him. I think a dark horse place for him to end up is New York. Um,
Ooh.
Possibly.
Phil Jackson loves his shooting guards in the triangle. They got some big contracts to throw around, so I think that's a dark horse place.
It's
But
possible. The one thing with New York though is they've been waiting so patiently for that 2015 cap
yeah,
space.
New York
That,
or Indiana, man.
yeah, I can see Indiana. I think Indiana makes a lot of sense because
Yeah,
they're going to have a bad year.
they're gonna
It's
have a bad
going to
year.
happen.
Might as well. Is David Weston expiring? I don't know.
I don't know if he's
Ooh.
expiring, but
But there could be like a
that could
three-way
work. Yeah.
trade going on or something. Gordon ends up in Indiana. He loves Indiana. He played for IU.
Yep.
I think, and they need offense. So him and Paul George
Exactly.
together, I think that functions really well.
Right on.
And he's a shooter, so we'll see.
Yep.
We'll see where he goes.
Right on.
It would be much better than them having to play Rodney Stuckey. I think it's 50% likely that Jimmer actually ends the season ahead of Austin in the backcourt rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. He's been playing pretty well in the preseason. He's been knocking down his shots. So I think it's pretty likely. More than likely, they're gonna play together.
Yeah.
But but I think once it comes down to it, he'll probably be the first or come off the bench before Austin. This is a possibility. I don't doubt that.
Yeah. And then I think Kumar's going to like this one. I think it's 80% likely that the presence of Omer Asik's picks is going to lead to increased efficiency for Drew Holiday, Eric Gordon, and Tyreke Evans in pick and rolls and handoffs.
Dude, we're dorks.
Yeah, I think exactly what you said. Asik said some of the most brutal picks in the league.
Mhm.
They might not be legal, but he said some.
It's legal if you don't
and-
get caught.
Exactly, and that's definitely gonna help our guards and by proxy AD. Yeah, I think you're spot on with that.
So for my predictions, I'm gonna start with the 20. I think it's 20% likely that Ryan Anderson wins Sixth Man of the Year.
Oh yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean he's gonna be getting like 30 minutes a game. He's basically playing starters minutes. He fits in perfectly with both Anthony Davis and Omer Asik. Those are both really interesting combinations that hide some of Ryan Anderson's deficiencies as well as the deficiencies of a guy like Omer Asik. It's really synergistic. They play together really nice. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him go 18-6.
Yeah, I think Anderson's gonna have a career year on the offensive glass. I think a few years in 2-3 years ago, it was like last couple of years in Orlando, he was top 10 or top 5 in offensive rebound rate or offensive rebounds, one of the two. And which kind of was a disconnect because he shoots threes, but he's grabbing the
Boards.
offensive glass. Yeah, he's grabbing
that's weird.
boards. But he's not one of those guys that out-muscle people for rebound. He's just really, really smart at positioning himself
Yep.
and being there at the right opportunity. And so, when I don't know how much we're gonna play this lineup, I would assume about 6 to 8 minutes a game. But when you go ultra big with Anderson, AD, and Asik, Anderson suddenly becomes an elite rebounding small forward. So,
Yeah. And AD's quick enough to guard a 3 for a little while.
And Asik is a hell of a box out guy.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, we kind of saw that in Washington. Like, I think within like 5 to 10 minutes, Anderson gobbled up like 5 offensive rebounds, and like they're tipping him in. When you have guys like Tyreke and like Drew and stuff that will miss at the rim, you gotta have someone clean it up.
Yep. And that's going to help them win games, and that makes me think that they're 50% likely to make the playoffs in the Western Conference.
Yeah.
I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit on this team. A little bit. I mean, in reality, I feel like closer to like 35 or 40, but it's 20, 50, 80, so I said 50.
I drink Kool-Aid all the time.
I think that this team could totally do it. A lot of it depends on health, but that 3-headed monster you guys have going on down low. We're not really down low because it's Ryan Anderson, but you mean what I know.
Yeah.
That is nuts, and that's the kind of environment that I think a guy like Tyreke would need to be able to score efficiency and to be able to play to his best ability.
Yeah. I think it's going to rest on 3 things. Number 1, health. Number 2, the growth of Anthony Davis. How big of a step is he going to take? Can he take that step to be like a legitimate top 5 player in the league? And 3, like the health. Our role players and guards and everyone else has to step up. So those 3 things are going to be things to watch out for this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my 80% prediction is that Omer Asik is here for the long haul. Like, I would not be surprised if he retired here. And my reason for this is, for one, if you're a player, you love playing with this guy. I mean, I've never met him in person, but if he is anything like as a human being, I mean, as long as he's not like smacking people in public, he sets great screens, doesn't take the ball very much, rebounds, covers for your blown defensive assignments. Everywhere you screw up, it's okay. Omer's got your back, essentially, and that's. He seems like he'd be really fun to play with because he basically does all the hard stuff nobody wants to do. And I think that. Oh, go ahead.
A little quote from this summer when Monty and AD met Omer in Spain during FIBA, and Monty was talking to Omer, and Omer's like, "All I want to do is rebound and play defense." And Monty told AD that, and AD didn't believe it, so he's like, "Come over here," and like he called AD over and had Asik repeat the words to AD, and according to AD,
puts them in the same order.
Yeah, no. According to AD, he's like, "Man, I was smiling like the Kool-Aid man when I heard that." And I was like,
oh, that's perfect. Yep. He's like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah. So I do think he's gonna enjoy playing with Omer a lot. I think the rest of the players are too. He's just a guy that does his job really, really well.
Yeah, there's a lot of broken promises out in Houston when it comes to Omer. They brought him in like, "You're gonna start." Lol, JK. Dwayne.
Yeah.
So this team's gonna love him, and I think he's gonna feel that like on a personal level. People don't really talk about that much, but like on a personal level, it's like he went from like a really crappy apartment to like an average house, essentially, in terms of like the way the team feels about him and treats him and stuff. So in that crappy apartment makes that average house feel like a mansion.
Yeah.
Essentially, just talk metaphorically about it. So I think he's going to be here for a long time. I think they're probably going to re-sign him because I don't think that they're going to be able to bring in a guy like a Marc Gasol in free agency. And you got Omer Asik, and it's awesome, and he's going to be here for a long time. He's going to play really well with Anthony Davis, and if I am a Pelicans fan, I am hyped.
Yeah, like, obviously Gasol would be the dream fit, but like he's a pipe dream, and to be honest, I think our priority should be to retain Asik and then go after a winning player.
Yep.
That's all they have to do, and I think we'll be fine for the next few years.
So speaking of being fine in the next few years, what's the consensus on if this team's going to be good now?
Like this season?
This season. Is this team going to be good?
I think a lot of the Pelican fan base is really hyped. Last year we won 34 games with all those injuries, so naturally, last year was the year we were supposed to make a push for the playoffs, and this year we've gotten better. We've added pieces, so everybody is really, really excited to get the season going and earn that playoff spot back. Management has put a lot of money into it. Ownership wants it to happen, so that's what the feel is around here. But whether it actually happens, you never know. The West is really, really hard. All 8 playoff teams got better, basically. They didn't really sit still.
We had a little dropout.
It's going to be interesting to see who drops out. And Phoenix got better too.
You're going to drop out because you just had a dropout in the Google Hangout. Yeah, I agree with you. I think this team's going to be good enough to make the playoffs in the West, maybe. And that's the key word, maybe. And I think that if this team was in the East, they'd probably be like a 6th or 7th seed.
I'd say higher. I definitely think it'd be a higher seed than.
Okay,
than
well,
6th,
5th, maybe 5th, maybe 4th. I don't know. But I think they do well in the East, but they're not in the East. They're in the West, and it seems kind of like the threshold for making it into the playoffs there is like 50 games.
Yeah.
And considering that they're playing against other Western Conference teams, and a lot of these teams got better, I wouldn't be so sure. But if I'm a Pelicans fan, I'm hopeful that this team can make the playoffs. They improved greatly. It's going to be a much better year than last year because of the additions they made. They added one of the best defensive centers in the game of basketball. Of course, things are going to get better. So I think ultimately this team's going to be good. It's just, you have to keep your expectations aligned with reality.
Yeah.
Lower the, I feel like a dick saying this, but like lower the optimism like a notch. And, Nah, I don't blame you.
You get excited. Like, there's few things to get excited about, and if you're excited about something, you shouldn't lower the optimism at all. Like, so what if they don't do that well? You were excited for the time being.
I'm a Pistons fan, first and foremost, so I've been jaded. So, don't take me seriously, guys. Josh, what do you have to say?
Well, I think if the playoffs were actually seeded 1 through 16, according to record, regardless of conference, they'd have a great shot at making the playoffs.
Agreed.
But like you guys both mentioned, the West is ridiculously tough.
Yep.
Like the 9th and 10th seeds in the West last year would have made the playoffs in the East and would have been more than just like a 7th or 8th seed. So the West is crazy tough, and a lot of teams got better. So for me, it's kind of a maybe, maybe not. Like Kumar said, I think a lot of it is going to be riding on their health this year.
Agreed.
I think it goes back to what I said earlier. If they have a top 15 offense, a top 15 defense, they can put themselves in a really good position to make that push. But I think the offense is going to be there. It's not going to be a problem. It's all on defense this year.
I agree with that.
Yep.
All right. So does anybody have any final words?
Oh yeah, where are all these questions? I can't see them.
Oh, the ones in the chat?
Yeah.
We got to 2 of them.
Okay.
Yeah, are there more?
Let's see if there's more.
I can't see them either.
Okay, so it says Faces are doomed this season. Shame for Ari Bird. The assist questions we did. People talking about penises. Monty. I was told there would be Kumar. There need to be more advanced stats for fouls. Yes, there do. Or yes, yeah. That's English.
Yes, there should.
Yes,
be.
there should. Whatever. Does Anthony? No, I'm not going to talk about that. Tell Kumar I'm pissed about synergy being down. I am too. I think everybody in this chat is.
I abstain.
I don't blame you. 41 wins for this Pelicans team this year. Yeah.
I think a winning record is something to optimistically hope for, whether they make the playoffs or not.
Agreed.
I think they stand a good shot of at least having a winning record.
Yeah.
Who thinks that the NBA draft from 2012 is rigged? Probably none of us.
You could say every single draft pick, every number 1 pick in history, you can come up with some sort of narrative where it was, kind of rigged.
I'd like to take this moment to thank Chris Paul and Basketball Reasons for landing us Anthony Davis, our Lord and Savior.
Exactly. Why will Austin Rivers turn to Manu Ginobili 2.0? Because he won't. I'm sorry, bud.
He really will. I believe it.
You may be drinking too much of the Kool-Aid, Kumar.
Okay. You can never have too much Kool-Aid. And New Orleans, it's not Kool-Aid. It's more like a daiquiri.
Is there like a special New Orleans flavor?
Yeah, it's called a strawberry daiquiri.
There you go.
You get it through a drive-through. They don't care.
Who would win a game of 21 between the three of us? It'd probably be Kumar, because I haven't seen a gym in months.
I have arthritis.
So, he has arthritis and yeah.
Yeah, and a pacemaker. I'm old as hell.
So, okay, so I think that wraps this up. So if you like this little live stream thing we did and want to see more of them, hit that like button. If you didn't like it and you don't want to see more, hit that dislike button. And if you did like this and you maybe want to see more of our team previews, we have a subscribe button down below, and that'll let you be notified of all of our future team previews and all that fun stuff. We try to get one out every day, Monday to Friday, for every single. We're going through all 30 teams. We're giving the people what they want. And I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much, Kumar, for coming on. It's been a blast chatting Pelicans with you.
It's been a lot of fun. You know, it's not every day I get to talk about the Pelicans.
Actually, it is every day you get to talk about the Pelicans. It's R&B. All right. So I think that's a wrap. Thanks for coming out, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Keep being awesome.
Take care, guys.